Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Hello and thank you for downloading the Amazon show here on Wisp Sports. I'm Chris Stafford and you can join in the conversation anywhere on social media by following us at Wisp Sports. Our guest today is British ultra-endurance cyclist Emily Chappell, who started cycling as a commuter before becoming a courier in London, which she did for 6 years. But eventually she swapped the narrow roads of London town for the open countryside to challenge herself in ultra races and long-distance cycling. In 2011 to 2013, she cycled across Asia and from Wales to Japan. A year later, she took on Iceland, and then in the first 3 months of 2015, it was Anchorage to Seattle, which was great preparation for the Transcontinental Race. But alas, after dropping out halfway when she suspected she was having a heart problem, which turned out, fortunately, to be painful intercostal ribs, she determined to give it another shot in 2016. Now, she has recently published her second book, Where There's a Will, in which she shares that journey. And as well as the complex emotions of winning such an event, she reveals everything that being a woman in events like this entails, from periods to body image, and how cycling has helped her battle with depression. Hi, Emily. Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
Well, tell us a little bit about where you are now, because you're in the middle of promoting your new book.
Yes, so I'm currently in Oxford. I have a whole day off, which is amazing because the next month or so is going to be quite full on. I'm going around the country, mostly by bike, but there will be a few trains, speaking in various different places and hopefully meeting a lot of nice people. And yeah, I think I'm on the move till at least mid-December. So it's quite nice to sit still for a day.
Absolutely. And most of this, as you say, cycling. It seems that anywhere you are, there is a bicycle involved.
Pretty much, yes. I actually now have, it's almost like a phantom limb. I found myself in a train a couple of weeks ago without a bicycle. And I had this sense for the whole journey that part of me was in the bike compartment by the door and kept having to remind myself that it wasn't. And I didn't have to pay attention to that, because normally there is a bicycle within a few meters of me.
When did this obsession and I say obsession in the nicest possible way, because it's more like a partnership and, as you say, an extension of your body to have a bicycle with you. But when did that passion then, if you like, when did that all begin? Were you one of those children that always had a bike and was biking around the village?
No, not at all. I wished I was. I learned to ride very late as a child. I think because we didn't live in the village. My family lived out in the country. And I remember saying, my goodness, if I lived down in the village with everyone else, I'd be out on my bike all the time with my friends. But I was 7 before I learned. And until my early 20s, I cycled as much as anyone else does. You know, I had bikes from time to time. I cycled to and from lectures at university, but I was not a cyclist. There was no obvious sign that I was going to turn into what I've now turned into. And it was when I moved to London after university that I decided I wanted to commute by bike. And I can't really remember why, because I also remember being very scared of it and not really being sure that you could cycle in a city unless you were some sort of superhuman. But somehow I got into it. And then you're right to say obsession. The obsession took hold then and there, and it just it's carried me onwards like a tsunami for the last 13 years or so.
Where did you grow up, Emily?
Mid Wales.
Where exactly?
Oh, exactly. Near Llanidloes, which is a town not many people have heard of. It's the first town on the River Severn. And it's a very small place, very beautiful area. And I spent a few years living there quite recently, and discovered that it's amazing for cycling. I didn't really know this when I was growing up.
Oh, I can well believe it. You know, I spent many years in the Hay Hay-on-Wye area in South Wales. So I'm very familiar with it. It would be good cycling country, I would imagine. I don't know what the traffic's like today, but I can imagine that would be a great hunting ground for you on a bike.
Yeah, well, it's very, very quiet. What I loved about it is that I come from London, where there is, as I'm sure everyone knows, quite a lot of traffic. And when I first moved to Wales, I was going out on my bike for a few hours, and I wouldn't see any cars. I was on these tiny country lanes, and I remember thinking once, maybe they've closed the roads. Maybe I'm not supposed to be here. I've not seen anyone for a really long time. And then eventually a car went past, and I realised it was fine. And you've got to like going uphill. There's quite a lot of big hills there, but quiet country lanes everywhere.
Yeah, good for fitness work for sure. So what were your sports of choice then, Emily, as a child?
I wasn't sporty as a child. I was into swimming a bit. And well, it's not completely true to say I wasn't sporty. I think the problem was I was a total nerdy swot. I was very academic and very, good at school. And I was actually reasonably good at sports as well. And every now and then, every couple of years, my school or my PE teacher would kind of figure out that I was quite good at high jump, for example. And so I'd get taken to athletics meets and things like that. But all the other people who were going to the athletics meets were not academic. Sport was their thing, and this was their world. And I would sit there in between events, reading a book or doing my homework, and people would occasionally come up to me and kind of prod me and go, "What are you doing? What are you reading?" And I just, it wasn't friendly. I didn't feel like I fit in. So although the sport itself I was all right at and sometimes enjoyed, I never identified as a sporty person because the overwhelming feeling was I didn't belong there. And it feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity, but of course I'm making up for it now, so this is okay. But I did the classic thing in my early to mid-teens of just stopping doing any physical activity, which I know a lot of girls do. And, I got a bit fat. I just spent a lot of time in the library. I skived off PE, and I was just not a sporty person until I found bikes. I still look at myself and think, hang on, now you're an athlete. How on earth did that happen?
So it was a complete transference then for you. Tell us about that journey, how that actually took place, because I know you were a courier. So was it about making a living that you bought yourself a bike and decided to be a courier, or you wanted an active job?
The couriering came a couple of years later. So I first got into cycling through commuting, and I just rode 7 miles to work every morning, 7 miles back, and instantly loved it. Instantly felt kind of alive and happy and fit. And suddenly I could navigate the city, because London is, big and frightening and confusing. And I very quickly started to learn my way around it and learn that it wasn't daunting. I could just get on my bike and go where I wanted to go. So it was also this steadily growing sense of kind of confidence and capability, and like, I can handle this. I know I can just launch myself in and I'll get through it, which continues even now. I'm still discovering that I'm capable of much more than I thought I'd be. And that was a wonderful, wonderful thing to have inadvertently given myself. So I carried on commuting and got into long distance riding at the weekends, just with friends. I met people who were into big rides, and so I got into them too. And I discovered that cycle couriers were a thing. And of course, as most cyclists in London do, thought, oh my God, they're so cool, look at them. So I always wanted to be one as soon as I knew what they were. And it was just by chance that I became one. I was looking for a job when the 2008 recession hit, and there were fewer and fewer jobs. And this was the only one I got. I didn't think I would end up doing it for 6 years. I thought maybe 6 months. And then I could forever after at dinner parties say, yeah, I was a cycle courier once. I had a go at that. I didn't expect that it would be this massive turning point in my life and this thing that made me happier than I'd ever been in a job, and all of that.
And of course, women often say that cycling is empowering, it's liberating, it's all of those things. And I can quite understand you navigating London by bicycle. I've done it myself for a long time. What was your commute then? Because I can tell you, there was a time that I would race around Trafalgar Square without a helmet and go hell for leather. and just stick my arm out. But I don't think you can do that now.
Well, my commute was various places. I mean, I always lived in South or Southeast London, and I think I was coming around Trafalgar Square sometimes, and I tended to be going up into central London. I worked near Regent's Park for a while, and then I was at university in SOAS. And yeah, I would race people along the way. That was always fun. Very difficult to have a chilled ride in London because there's always somebody who is just faster than you, and you think, I can have him. Especially when I was a courier, I discovered all these alternative routes. So I could give me any point in Southeast London, and I can tell you 3 different routes to get there. One to avoid the hills, one to go over the hills, one that's busy and fast, one that's quiet, one that goes past the shops. And it was as much the speed and the excitement as it was the getting to know the place and feeling like I know where everything is. I'm on top of this, I can navigate it, and that sense of not exactly control, but sort of comfort, being comfortable in your environment.
Yeah, I'm sitting here smiling, Emily, and nodding my head because having done that myself, it's great fun, isn't it? It's like a little personal challenge. And it really shows how competitive you can be, really, when you, as you say, knowing people that you can take down on those bike commutes. And it's a great way to see London, or a great way to see anywhere, as we know. But thinking about London and finding those alternate routes, and taking all the side streets and I recommend it to anyone. But it clearly was a great hunting ground for you, and it launched your biking career, into something even more adventurous, didn't it? Tell us how that transition happened.
You mean the transition from being a courier to doing the bigger rides?
Yes.
Well, I think I'd been a courier for, I think at that point, maybe 2.5 years. And I'd got over the initial hurdle of it being really difficult and a really big challenge to get my head around. Because when I started off, I was pretty useless at it. And that became a challenge and a thing I had to get my teeth into. And after a couple of years, I got the hang of it. It was always challenging, but it was a safe, comfortable challenge, and I enjoyed it. And I'd gone into my local bike shop on my way home one day to get something fixed or replace a part or something. And I had my usual little moan about, oh God, my bike keeps breaking. This is really annoying. And one of the people in there gently pointed out that, Emily, you do quite a lot of miles. That might have something to do with the fact that your components keep wearing out. And I thought about this, and I think I thought to myself, God, yeah, I do. I wonder how many miles I've done since I started the job, because it's probably about 300 miles a week I was doing. And I thought, I wonder how many times around the world that would be. And I think that was when the light bulb appeared. And there were a few other things that summer that tilted me in the direction of, what if I cycled around the world? And the really significant thing about that is that I can imagine a few years previously, I might have had that idea. And if I'm honest, I think the idea was actually already in my head, just very, very hidden and repressed. Because it kind of, when I thought of it, I thought, oh, yes, like I've always wanted to. Of course, I'll cycle around the world. But it was because I'd spent 2 or 3 years bombing around London being a courier that I actually knew I would be capable of it, so dared to do it. Because you have to be very capable as a courier. You're on your own. You don't have your supervisor sort of breathing down your neck and helping you with things. There's no one you can go and tell when things go wrong. You do have to deal with stuff like aggression from everyone, basically. And that's not always fun or easy, but you develop strategies, you learn to be assertive. You learn not to take any crap from people, and you learn to solve problems when they come up. And sometimes it's never a sometimes it is a life-threatening problem. Usually not. But your bike can break in complicated ways when there are big logistical things you're meant to be dealing with, and you just have to get through that. You can't ditch it or you'll lose your job. You can't call anyone in to help. You have to sort things out for yourself. And all of that, dealing with all of that, had just given me this slightly bigger sense of, I can deal with things that come up. I was still terrified. As soon as I decided I was going to cycle around the world, I set my departure date as far away as I could get away with without it being too far away that I wouldn't actually do it, because I was so frightened. But I also, somewhere in my head, knew that I could do it. And I did.
It's called procrastination, Emily.
Something like that, yeah. So yeah, that I think couriering led me to that. And although couriering was, I did it at home, effectively, I did it as my job, I consider it my first big adventure because it was what broke me out of the mold of normal life and helped me to be confident and capable, and also gave me the ability to bite off something much, much bigger than I thought I could chew, and gradually, to sort of continue the metaphor, get my head around it and digest it. So that, the cycling around the world, well, I cycled across Asia in the end. That was the second big adventure.
Now, that takes a bit of planning, obviously, and a will to do this alone, or was there any thought of having a travelling companion?
No, not at all. I think partly because I'd always wanted to travel, since before I was able to, since I was a child. And initially I did think, I need to find somebody to go on these trips with me. And I didn't have that sort of friends. I was always very jealous of people who went off on their gap year with all their mates. I just didn't have people like that. So at first, when I was in my teens, this was a sad thing and perhaps a hindrance. I wished that I had the sort of friends that I could travel with so that I could travel. But by this point, I was used to doing things on my own, and I'd come to really love it. Couriering, I was on my own. There were always people around, but I did it on my own. And there was no one who would obviously cycle around the world with me. And I really didn't want anyone to, because it was my thing. And if someone else came, they might have their own ideas and their own, they might want to go at a different pace from me and all of that. And while I was on the trip, I occasionally would run into another cyclist who was going the same way, and we'd ride together for a few days. It was never more than a few days, and it always worked out that we would then part ways. And by the time we did, I was always very, very ready to. They were all lovely. They were all really nice people, and I enjoyed riding with them. But then I got back to the real business of doing it on my own, and I loved it. I still love riding alone. I love riding with other people, but riding alone is the best.
Well, it brings with it the psychological challenges too, doesn't it? When you're in foreign countries and you're battling alone against the elements, and I hesitate to say foreign adversaries because that sounds like there's gremlins along the way. But the challenges of cycling in another country where English may not be the first language, and you have to obviously sustain yourself during that time. It is hugely psychological. Did that present its own challenges to you as well as the physical endurance?
Only beforehand, only in anticipation, because everybody said, "Aren't you worried about dangerous foreigners?" or some variation on that question. As soon as I was on the road, it all turned round, and it was the opposite. I think in every way that you could imagine. So everywhere I went, people were kind to me and wanted to help me and feed me and protect me and make friends with me. I met one or two dodgy people. The ratio of dodgy people I met to good people was far lower than it would be in London or anywhere else, so it was almost negligible. It was this wonderful, ongoing, heartwarming succession of guardian angels. And I still, whenever I go on a bike trip, I have a wonderful time. And when I come home from the bike trip in the immediate aftermath, that's when my sense of human kindness and of the good in the world is at its very highest. My faith in humanity gets topped up by going on bike tours, which is the opposite of what everybody tells you it's going to be like. And I think especially traveling on your own. So really the only advantage to having a traveling partner that I sometimes think would be really great to have someone to watch my bike while I go to the loo or go into a shop. Apart from that, I think you're at a massive advantage when you're on your own, because if you're a person and you see two people traveling together, you're more likely to think, well, they've got each other, they seem fine, they probably don't need any help from me. And it's harder to approach people who are a group or a pair. Whereas I'm on my own, So people often say, oh, well, she must need a friend. I'd better go and talk to her. And because I'm a woman on my own and everyone, for some reason, thinks women are very vulnerable, they think, oh, wow, she must be so vulnerable. I must protect her from all the evil people in the world, of which there are basically hardly any. So it's this, I benefit, I think, from everybody else's fears for my safety. It feels almost like a guilty secret, because before I left, I was very frightened and everybody was very frightened for me. And as soon as I was on the road, it was so easy and it felt so good. And everyone looked after me so much that I felt like a fraud, because everyone at home was still telling me what a hero I was. And I thought, I'm barely doing anything. I just ride my bike and then people pop up and give me food all the time. Like, I rode through Iran and everyone in Iran wants to give you food. It's a full-time job just consuming it.
So you've overcome the imposter syndrome then, I would imagine, after the journeys that you've taken and proven that you can do it single-handed.
Oh, gosh. I wish. I'm getting there now, actually. It's imposter syndrome is a funny one. I have this conversation with people all the time, because I think pretty much all of the women I know and who I meet in my professional life who are successful enough to be doing what they're doing have imposter syndrome and feel like they're a massive fraud and they don't deserve to be there and they're going to be found out at any minute. And that is how I still feel a lot of the time. But I've decided recently that I have to get over it and sort it out, because I think it's not only holding me back, but if so I give a lot of talks, for example, and do public appearances and things. If I give a talk and I go on and on and on about feeling unworthy and feeling stupid and not good enough and all of that, someone in the audience who's maybe a few years behind me will listen to this and think, well, if she's up there and she feels like she's useless, then what am I? It's going to be, it's not a helpful thing to give to other people. And also hearing me talk like that, people will learn to talk like that. We need to stop having conversations like that, because it just continues this rhetoric of, I'm probably not worthy, I'm probably not good enough. I don't think I'm capable of turning into some kind of massive trumpet blowing, drum banging, aren't I great person. And I think I will always have a bit.
Well, that's not British. This is the conversation that we have on this side of the pond. It's the different cultures that the British are not capable of that sort of brashness. So look at me syndrome, and I think it's finding a balance, because, as you say, when you stand up there and share your journey and your messages to others who aspire to do something or part of what you've achieved, you're sending the wrong messages if you pretend that you shouldn't be there, or if you make out you shouldn't be there. And it is often with women, isn't it? We feel that is a problem. And I think, as you say, that's a rhetoric that we need to stop. That's not a narrative that is positive and healthy. So that's, I guess, your responsibility to then say, okay, we can do, not we shouldn't be here, but yes, we can.
Yeah. And I think one of my biggest motivators is sharing all of this with other people. I've realized that, we may get onto this later, much more than succeeding and winning and all of those things that I do care a bit about. What really, really does it for me at the moment is being able to pass on what I've learned to other people and see them flourish. And so, I think it's okay to admit to feeling like an imposter sometimes, but also to say, I know I'm not. I know that I'm capable and I've got this far. I still feel sometimes like it's an illusion and it's all going to be taken away. But that's just how our minds currently work. And if you feel like that, it may not be the case that that's actually true. And I think, the feedback I've had on the book just so far, it's been out for about 3 days. A couple of people have already read it and said it's such a relief to know that other people have feelings of being frightened and being useless and not being good enough and all of that. It is helpful to share these things. I think you just have to share them in a way that acknowledges that they're just feelings and we all have them. They're not, this reason to stop and give up. So I'm trying to reframe that at the moment. And also, what a waste of time to have imposter syndrome and spend whole life thinking, oh, I don't deserve to be here. I mean, why not just enjoy where you've got to and take responsibility for the fact that, I'm not perfect, I'm not good at everything, but I've succeeded a bit in what I've done, and I'm quite happy about that.
Exactly. And, you've proven what you can do, what women can do. And so, yeah, I think you should have this little angel sitting on your shoulder, patting you on the back rather than beating you. So let's talk about some of those wonderful journeys that you have done and the races that you've done. At what point did you want it to become a race and not just a race unto yourself?
It was. I can trace it back quite precisely. It was October 2014. And I met up in a pub in King's Cross in London with a few women who had done ultra distance races, like the ones that I'm now doing. So it was one of them was Juliana Buring, who at that point was the record holder for circumnavigating the world.
And yes, she's been on this show too. We've had Juliana.
I'm in good company then. So at that point, to me, she was a massive hero. So I turned up as this cringing little fangirl. But she'd come across me and she'd read my blogs. So she thought I was great too. So we eventually, after saying, no, you're the hero. No, you're my hero. We got over ourselves and made friends. And until that point, I'd been a bike messenger and a cycle tourer. I'd not thought of myself as an athlete at all. That was something that other people did. It wasn't really totally within my my view. I was in denial. I was actually very, very interested, but I hadn't acknowledged it to myself yet. So I just thought, no, you people are a different species. It's fascinating to meet you, but I'm not one of you. But they all thought I was, and they were talking to me as though I would be entering races next year. And I spent half the evening saying, no. And then by the end of the evening, I had agreed that I would enter the Transcontinental the following year. And I did when entries opened the next month. And I think it's quite telling that when I entered the race, I just cycled the previous night from London to Mid Wales for my father's birthday, which I think was about 200 miles, something like that. And I did it, on a fixed gear bike in the rain. I don't think I could do that now, actually. And it was hard. It was a big challenge, but that was something I did sometimes. And I was sitting there entering this race in the aftermath of that, believe it or not, still thinking, am I really up to this? You've got to put something in the application about your previous experience. And I thought, I'm going to have to fudge this. And in hindsight, I mean, I don't know if I want to list all the experience I had, but I had enough experience. I was going to be okay at this. I had every right to be there. So I entered and I got a place. And in hindsight, again, they were giving places to any woman who entered. So that shouldn't have been a big surprise. And I lined up for the start of the race the following summer.
Hi, I'm Nicole Drought. I'm an Irish racing driver and a proud WISP ambassador. I support WISP because they help to increase visibility in women's sport. This is quite important because it will help to encourage girls into sport if they have role models to look up to. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Nicole Drought Racing. Thanks for listening and supporting WISP.
And so training involved what?
I've never properly trained. Which sounds really disingenuous. I've never followed a training plan. I've just ridden my bike an awful lot. So I really felt like I was jumping in at the deep end with this race. And I didn't know, I'd never raced. I'd never been competitive. I'd never really ridden with other people. So I thought, well, what do I do to train? Okay, do some big rides. I'd better get some practice riding with other people and seeing what they're like. So I went and did a couple of rides with a cycling club near where I lived. And oh my goodness, the first, so much imposter syndrome going on here. The first time I went out with them, it was a Saturday morning. Couldn't sleep the night before. I really didn't want to go. I was making all these excuses to myself, but I knew I had to do it. And I turned up and it was all men. And I went and found the ride leader and asked him what the average speed was. And I said, if I get dropped, it's fine. I can find my own way home. Don't worry about me. Just, I'll keep up if I can. And we set off. And we got to the first hill and I just breezed through the bunch and was one of the first to the top. and felt embarrassed and thought, oh, was that inappropriate? Should I not have done that? And it turned out I was fine. I was better than I thought I would be. And they were not scary. They were nice and friendly. So there were quite a few things like that, these kind of hurdles I had to overcome. So yeah, I did a lot of very big rides. I used to ride from London to Manchester. Wherever I had to go, I'd try to ride there. And I experimented with, for example, if you're doing, say, 250 miles, it's going to take you about 24 hours. So you're always going to go through the night at some point. So I experimented with starting maybe in the morning or in the afternoon or late at night to put the night in different places in the ride and see whether when I had a low point, it was more to do with the time of ride or the time of day, if that makes sense. And one of my discoveries was that no matter how long I've been riding, I always have a low point first thing in the morning, just around the time the sun comes up. And that was quite a useful thing to learn. And I had a few bad rides, and I had this idea in my head. This was all very unscientific. I mean, this was not a good training plan, but I had an idea that if I suffered a lot during my preparation, that would be less suffering that would happen during the race because I would be learning from my mistakes. And once you've been through an experience a few times, it doesn't stop being hard, but it stops being as hard because it's not the first time you're doing it. You know you got through it before, so you will again. So I thought I wasn't seeking out suffering, but if it happened, I decided it was a really valuable thing. And I think it was.
Well, it sounds as if you're well prepared. You know, the actual Transcontinental bike race itself is 4,000 kilometers, which I believe is 2,485 miles or thereabouts in mileage, which is a long way by anybody's stretch of imagination. And the endurance that you need is, as I said earlier, is psychological as well as physical. And riding through the night is not something most of us have to do. And it's one thing cycling in daylight, but it's another staying motivated and focused during those dark hours, especially out where you're relying on the moon to light your path. How did you overcome those challenges, Emily?
This was another thing very much like the fear of riding alone in foreign countries, where as soon as you do it, you realise it's actually the best. It's your fears turn out to be your strengths. So I love riding at night because it's quiet. You tend to have the whole place to yourself. And I actually find if I've ridden all night, around about 6 o'clock when the roads start to get busy, my mood really sinks because suddenly I'm sharing the road with people again. And when you're riding at night, I always have lights and reflective gear. So I know I'm very, very visible, more visible than I'd be during the day. And you can see cars coming a long way off because they have lights on. And I think that the darkness, it changes your relationship with your environment, with the landscape around you. So some senses are heightened, like you smell more, you smell all the interesting things going on in the countryside, and you hear more. And I've seen all sorts of animals. I've seen badgers sort of wombling along the side of the road. At one point, I was riding. I think I was somewhere between Cheltenham and Oxford, first thing in the morning, and there was this beautiful white owl swooping alongside me and every now and again switching to the other side of the road. But she followed me for maybe a few minutes, and it was incredible. And you get to watch the sunrise. It's pitch black. And then there's this time of night where you start to notice you can see some outlines. You can see the horizon a little bit. And the sky starts to look a bit kind of washed out and grubby. And then you get a glow. And then you just watch as it all comes to light. And even if you've stayed up all night to watch the sunrise, you don't really watch it as much as when you're on a bike because it's hard to concentrate if you're just sitting there. But when you're riding along, all you're doing is riding along and looking at what's around you. So I've really studied some good sunrises. And there's this exciting feeling of having the whole world to yourself because you're going along and most people are asleep. They're missing this. And you're having this exciting adventure. And, you're going through boring British towns that you wouldn't give a second thought to, and suddenly it becomes this kind of, oh my goodness, I'm scampering around after dark. I'm like a kid in a fairy tale. So yeah, I absolutely love riding at night. It's really special, and it feels comfortable and safe, and yeah, you have dark points, and if you're tired or if you're feeling sleepy or grumpy or something, it can be hard. But in general, I prefer it to riding during the day.
Yeah, I'm with you on the magic of that first light in the morning. It's my favourite time, absolutely my favourite, because it's magic and you've got a whole day in front of you. So I'm with you. I'm wondering, though, if there were any animals that scared you when you were abroad. Did you meet with anything that was threatening?
I've never I've never cycled anywhere with big dangerous animals that weren't hibernating. So I've done a bit of winter cycling in Alaska, Canada, but the bears were all asleep at that point. The worst I've encountered are dogs crossing Europe and parts of Asia, and I have got quite lucky with dogs. A lot of cyclists have some really bad dog stories, and I've been chased a few times, and I've normally been lucky enough to be going downhill or something like that. At one point, I think the last night of the Transcontinental, or the last night but one, I was being chased by a pack of Greek dogs up a hill, which was really horrible because I was really tired and having to try and sprint. And a guy on a scooter kind of came and rode alongside me just to keep them at bay. So thankfully he was there. And after that, I was really paranoid. And whenever I heard a dog barking anywhere, I was kind of freaking out slightly. But I've not had any very bad experiences.
Well, the Transcontinental, just explain where that race went, because you mentioned Greeks there. What was the route of the Transcontinental?
Well, the route changes every year. And this is part of the beauty of the race, because it's a different race every year. And I think it makes it a lot more exciting. And adds another facet to how interesting it is to race and to watch. So the year I won it, which I assume we're going to be talking about, it started in Gerardsbergen in Belgium, and it finished in Çanakkale in Turkey. And you're given 4 checkpoints that you have to pass through, and other than that, you create your own route. So if you're watching the race, it's really interesting because you have all the riders carry trackers and you have all these dots on the map that you can follow. And they don't all go the same way. I mean, some of them get lost and go completely the wrong way, but you will see there are times where the pack will split because riders have made different decisions. And some have thought, let's take this fast, flat road that's slightly longer, but will get me there quicker. And some say, let's take the more direct route through the mountains. It'll be a bit more gravelly, but, it might be more fun. That was normally me. So it also means it's a test of not just your strength and speed, but your strategy and how you plan and prepare. And the more time you spend planning your route, the more efficient it will be. Or in my case, the more interesting looking mountain roads you'll find and think, well, a 2-hour detour won't do any harm. So it was. I don't know if I could tell you how many countries it went through without taking a long time to count them up. But I rode from Belgium into France. First checkpoint was Col de Césatte by Clermont-Ferrand, and then into the Alps. There was a checkpoint at Grindelwald, and then over many, many, many alpine passes. That was unbelievably exhausting. There was another checkpoint in the Dolomites, and then down into the Balkans. The 4th checkpoint was in the Dermitor National Park in Montenegro, and then across, I went through Albania. Not many other people did. Albania, Macedonia, through Greece and into Turkey. And it was wonderful.
How long did it take you?
13 days, 10 hours and 28 minutes.
And why did you decide to write a book about that particular race?
Well, I wrote a book about racing in general. My few years of getting into this ultra endurance self-supported racing and what happened and how it went. My original intention was that I really didn't want the race I won to be a centerpiece of the book, and I definitely didn't want it to be at the end of the book, because I thought that's such a boring thing to do, to be like, I wasn't very good at it and then I got better and then I won, and to finish with that seemed like quite an arrogant way of doing it. So I did insist that the race I won would be somewhere buried in the middle, but it ended up becoming a bit more of the book than I'd hoped, because my editor and publisher said, this really is a big part of the story. We need this bit in there. Though with that race, it was the 2 weeks I spent on the road that was the amazing experience. Winning was a bit of an afterthought, really. The race itself was incredible. And I think what made me want to write a book about it, it's the same motivation as writing the book about being a cycle courier, which was my first book. There were a lot of reasons, but one of them was I had to find a way of explaining it to myself, because I don't know why I was so interested in this and why I was so into it and why I was so passionate and why I put so much of myself into it. So cycle couriering, it's a fairly basic, simple job. You take an object from one place to another. I didn't think I'd find it so interesting. I didn't think I would stick with it for 6 years and always love it. So the book was an attempt to figure that out. Why is this so fascinating? What's in it? Can I reduce it down to a book? And it was similar with the racing. And also, it's a new sporting discipline, and that is still something that really excites me. So the Transcontinental was founded in 2013. We're now on race number 7. And it has changed and evolved over the years. And a lot of other races in this sort of style have sprung up. And it's gone from being this thing that fewer than 30 people did, and they just sort of turned up. It was very informal, and it was a race, but it was also just, let's go on a big adventure across the continent and see who gets there first. And now it's a formalized race. It's much more closely monitored. I think, maybe in a few years, some sort of governing body will come into this discipline. There are people crossing over from professional road racing into self-supported endurance racing. It's really interesting to watch it evolve and to be part of that. And in a sense, my story is already out of date because I stopped racing a couple of years ago. It's already changed and moved on, and the scene is different. And it's exciting, and also it's kind of just a massive privilege to have something in your life that is worth writing about because no one's written about it before, because it's new.
And in your book, you are very open about things like what women have to deal with, periods and body image, and you're also your own personal battle with depression, and where cycling has helped you on your own personal journey as well. You cover so many different aspects in that book. So I'm wondering where next, now that you can check those journeys, those races, and the second book. What's next for you?
That's the big question. And that is what everybody's asking me at the moment. And I don't know. I am right at the beginning of whatever is next. And that's quite exciting, because I've noticed that my life tends to go in cycles, and I tend to find a new thing, which a couple of years ago was racing, and think, right, I want to get my teeth into this, and start out and not be very good at it, then have a very steep learning curve, and eventually get good at it and feel like I've mastered it, and then burn it all to the ground and go and find something else. And so the next thing, I think I might already have it in my mind and not know it. I think it might be just around the corner. We'll have to see. I have taken up running recently, and I've entered an ultra marathon in March. I don't know if that's going to be the next big thing, because I don't know if running will actually be for me. But it's quite fun to have a hobby, because cycling is not a hobby anymore by any means. So the next thing, I don't know, but I'm quite excited about finding out. I want to write more books in future, and I think I want to write something that's a bit different from the 2 books I've written so far, because I'm happy with them, but they're a very specific type of book. They're memoir, they're about a period of my life and a challenge and what went on. I'd like to stretch myself a bit more as a writer. I'd like to do more writing, become more of a writer, and I'd like to teach. And I always need to cycle, because that is now just one of my basic physical requirements, along with oxygen and food. So I realise that's quite an inspecific answer, but that's probably the best I can do. There will be something next. Watch this space, because I am.
Yeah, because you won't just be cycling around the M25. We know that.
No. I think one of the things with cycling is It doesn't, I've run out of ways to challenge myself. Because once you've done the Transcontinental, it's quite hard to find something that's bigger than that. So now I still love cycling very, very much, but I love it in a different way. I love it because it's a thing I know I can go and I can do whatever I set out to do, although it might be very, very difficult. But I want something else, I don't know what yet, that I don't know I can do, that frightens me and that is a big challenge. So that's, I think that might no longer be cycling, but it doesn't mean that cycling will stop being part of my life.
Out of your comfort zone, it sounds like might be then maybe the title of your next book, Out of Your Comfort Zone. But the title of this book, Where There's a Will, by Emily Chappell. Emily, thank you for taking time to come on the programme. Appreciate it. And the very best of luck wherever your next journey takes you.
Thank you very much.
Happy holidays from Wisp Sports.
If you'd like to follow Emily on social media and find out more about her journeys on her website, then you'll find links to all of those on our website at wispsports.com. Just drop down the Listen tab to Amazon's. You can join in the conversation at any time here at Wisp Sports by following us at Wisp Sports on social media. And you can also reach us directly via email to info@wispsports.com if you have any suggestions for guests or any topics that you think we should be covering here at Wisp Sports. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for supporting women in sport everywhere. And by downloading this podcast, you're helping us to turn up the volume on women's sports.